A brief intro to the video. No Malibu update this week, at least on video. I had to work on my own car, so I had to take a break. Spent my whole weekend on the car, but it is now fixed. It still needs an EGR valve, but anyway, you'll see that in the video. But from what I understand, there is being work done on the Malibu, so for those looking for the Malibu update, gas tank is in. Matt's going to be working on, Lugnut is going to be working on the brake lines tomorrow, I believe. So, there is being progress made. Don't worry. On to the video. Hey everybody, Sprocket here. Just having to replace the radiator in the Caprice because it sprung a leak, which is, of course is in the shadows, so it's going to be hard to see. But down in here, one of the cores started leaking on my way home from work, actually before I left work and then on the way home from work. So that's what I'm going to be doing this weekend. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm going ahead and removing this. Of course, I had to remove the upper shroud, which is over there. 2 bolts here, same thing on the other side, and then 4 across the front. Lower shroud I have removed the 2 bolts that hold it in the bottom, but there's some other fastener holding it. I'm just not sure where yet. Or the other thing is the radiator could be sitting on it. I'm not sure yet, but it's draining right now. So I figure what I'm going to do while I have to do this is I'm going to go ahead and pull my intake and do the intake gaskets, replace the distributor. I already have all the parts for that. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. While I was looking at stuff, and how well we're going to be able to see this, but if you look down inside there on the intake, there's something wet. So I'm not sure what that is. So it's a good thing I'm going to be going in through this. But I'll show you more in a little bit. Alright, so got the radiator out. As you can see, lower shroud just sitting here. Sorry about the lighting. So if you look down there, that piece right there, that's your lower mount pad for the radiator. So I was right, the radiator does sit on top of this. So it also makes this more difficult to get out of here without removing the fan. As you can see, it's going to hit it. So fortunately in this case I don't have to pull it. So on to the air cleaner and start removing some of the accessories from the intake so we can get that done. Couple words of caution. These are plastic, okay, except for the fittings on the ends. These things, on these 80s, 90s vehicles, they get very, very brittle. So you want to be real careful when you go to remove them because they crack and break so stupid, simple, and easy, it's not even funny. I was blessed to be able to get this one off without breaking it because it snakes around a bunch of wiring and a bunch of other crap too. Another thing, these injector leads are notorious for breaking. As you can see, this one's in one piece yet, thank God. But that one, both of the tabs that hold it on, broke off. Again, from the heat cycles, they get very, very brittle. It's only plastic. So word of caution, be careful with them because, as you can see, they break. Okay, so got everything disconnected from this side. Get that back in line. So these are your computer grounds. Go right here. Now what you gotta be careful of, because they're notorious for it, you gotta try and loosen this nut, the whole stud turns. So they gotta get a real thin wrench in here to hold the stud so you can loosen that up. Because what ends up happening is these will twist off because the whole thing is moving. That heater hose back there, which you can barely see, that is a bear to get to, and then to get it to come off. Here it is right here. Got that off. All of the little pipes and tubings and everything. All the wiring goes to the coil, the distributor, throttle position sensor, idle air control, the actual injectors. Got that all kind of tied over here, out of the way. So, oh, and the temp sensor, forgot about that. There was a brace right here. Goes over here to this on a stud, which also holds my fuel lines, which goes back that way. So got that bracket off so I can be able to move those. Actually, they're gonna have to go that way, but when I go to pull the intake, so that way I can get them out of the way. I still have this hot lead that comes from the alternator, goes over here to the battery. Yep. So I gotta get that taken off of there. Then all my throttle linkage, cruise control, transmission, all that stuff. The airline right there, vacuum line, goes over to my booster. Gotta pull that. And a bunch of bracketry that needs to get out of the way. And of course, the distributor. So once I get all of that out of the way, oh, PCV valve, another vacuum line under it. So there's a lot of stuff you got to get out of the way in order to pull the intake on one of these. But yeah, show you more. Probably ain't gonna be today, but it'll be soon for you. A few seconds. All right, so we pick up where we left off. It's been a couple of days, but so I got to pull the linkage here. You get little clips like this, and basically how you get these off. Now, some people use a screwdriver. I just use a fingernail, but you got to peel this. If I can get, there we go. Come on, peel this up and kind of push it back at the same time. You slide that back, and the hole on this side is a little bit bigger, and it allows it to slide out over that pin. Now, I use two hands for this, so I'm not going to be able to show you how to do it, but I'm just explaining it to you. But, so I'm going to be rebuilding this throttle body, basically cleaning it all up real good, replacing all the gaskets and seals. So that's going to be a separate video, but I'll be pulling this off of the manifold before I go to pull the manifold, so show you more in a bit. Now, in a situation where you have two nuts together like this, you see how I have the wrenches I'm wanting to loosen? You put them like this, and you just give it a squeeze. This one's really tight, but this causes you to force them together, keeps one from spinning, and loosens the other one at the same time, so you don't worry about trying to spin both at the same time and twisting that line off. Just a piece of advice I learned from a guy I watch on YouTube, and I'm passing it on to you. Something interesting to note on this Caprice, which I didn't know until I was just looking at it. I'm used to the trucks where it's 1, 2, 3 bolts, but on this, it's 2 studs in the back, which also double as the air cleaner mount. So you'll need a wrench to get on here to get these 2 studs out. An open-end wrench. No, actually, you could use a box on that. You just have to take these nuts off. But just interesting thing that I noticed on how this one's mounted in. Oh, while I'm here, you can see I put the clip back on here. This is so I don't lose those, because sometimes those are hard to come by. So you want to make sure you put them back where they came from so you don't lose them. Okay, so as you can see, I have the throttle body off. I also determined some of that is actually fuel. So it's a good thing I'm going to be rebuilding the throttle body, because I got a leak somewhere. But that, and I'm hoping, I got to look, but I think these 2 O-rings for the feed line and the return line for the fuel are in the kit, so I can replace them. Now, there's this emissions vacuum line, runs from the canister underneath the alternator, goes up in the bracket over here, and it comes around like this up to the front of the throttle body. So that's why I had to pull the front hose, well, top hose, sorry. Now what you have to do with that is unless you want to pull the alternator, you have to snake it out that way, because this side's got too hard of bends. You're not going to get them out through here without breaking that plastic line. So I snuck it out that way, and now it's laying up there. So what I'm working on now, on this one, for some dumb reason, you can see, can you see it? There it is. That bolt right there, that's the other bolt that holds the coil in. You can't get a socket on that with the distributor cap in place. There's just not enough room. So, and you ain't getting a wrench in there either to do anything with it. So I have to pop the cap off, which I'm pulling the distributor anyway, so that's a good thing. Because what I'm going to do before I pull the distributor is I'm going to manually, by turning the crank up here, set this thing at top dead center with the rotor pointing at the number 1 cylinder, as far as which plug wire it's number 1. But that way, when I go to put everything back together, it's already at a point where I know it's at, and I can go from there. It'll make my initial startup and timing setting a little bit easier. So, yeah. Another thing, with this particular caprice, you gotta watch out for. When I replaced this coil, found that out, and I was like, well, that's freaking stupid. But hey, engineering. It's basically because of that screw, the boss that sticks out from the distributor, where it's set, is why you can't get on that thing with the cap on. So I suppose if you were to rotate the distributor, maybe 1 tooth or something like that, you probably get that out of the way. But I don't want to mess with it like that, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is and just tighten that coil down before I put the cap on. Call me lazy, but it'll work. I forgot to mention, I had to make a tool, as you can see, that would get in here for these distributor cap screws, because I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that because of the sun, but it's really tight underneath there because the distributor is underneath the cowl here. So there's not enough clearance to get a regular handled screwdriver in there, so I just have this nut driver and I cut half the handle off of it. Now this is just a cheapy, I don't know, a little Chinese thing I've had for years, so I wasn't too hurt about having to modify it. Just something else to think about with these. Something else, this bracket, this is what holds the throttle cable, the cruise control, and the TV cable or throttle valve cable for the transmission, controls your shifting. One of the bolts shares with the coil, and the other one is the intake. Get this out of the way, frees up a lot of space back here to work on the distributor. So just something I'm doing because I like being able to do things easier, so I'll do a little bit more work to make things easier. I know the lighting is bad, but the hold down clamp for the distributor right here, you got to loosen this bolt up. Now, a lot of times it just makes it easier if you have one of these. Okay, attached to a ratchet, got a little adapter there. You get these kits, usually they have a 9/16 and a ½ inch. Of course, all your Chevys are 9/16. Well, your old Chevys are. I can't speak for new ones because they don't have distributors, but anyway. So, loosening it up, basically 1 tooth at a time. As you can see, it's a 12 point, because you really don't have much room between that and that to be able to twist that. So then you can slide that clamp back out of the way. It's just basically shaped like this. Okay? You slide it back off of the boss on the distributor, and then you can pull the distributor out because it gives it enough clearance. You don't have to pull that all the way out most of the time. So now I'm ready to get the distributor out. So I'm gonna give it a twist, hopefully. Yep, so there, it twisted. So then you twist and lift at the same time. Sorry about the lighting issues. Now this one, I can tell, is pretty gunked up underneath, so it doesn't want to come out. It doesn't bode well, because that means I got some nastiness up inside this lifter valley, which you'll see in a little bit. So I'm going to need 2 hands to get this off, so I'll bring it back when I get it out. It might be hard to see. There is a lot of buildup on this thing from crusty old oil and some wear on them teeth that I'm not real keen on, but we'll have to see. This engine definitely has some wear in it, so yeah, that's why it didn't want to come out. Oh, something else I figured out, need to have that rotor off. Otherwise you still don't have enough clearance to get this thing out of here with the intake in the car. Alright, so you got this bracket back here in the back, goes around the heater fitting right there. It also has this little emissions piece on here. I think this is the EGR solenoid. Now you could take this little screw right here out and pull this from this, but this also is a lift point, That's why it's got this hole on. You get the front one here is the other lift point to be able to pull the engine. Your old Chevys actually came with those already on the car. Newer ones, not so much. But again, got this bracket out of the way. Now, something to take note of when you're removing these bolts. More often than not, these brackets have a slightly longer bolt. So you want to pay attention to that when you're pulling the bolts out to make sure that you get the right bolts back into place when you put them back in. All right, so got all the bolts loose, well, loosed out. So there's 12 bolts, and they go in sets of 2, 4, and then 6. And of course my camera doesn't want to focus. But now what you want to do, you want to try to avoid sticking anything in between here to pry this up, because it's a gasket surface, mating surface, you don't want to mar it up. So there's a little boss sticking out right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my bracket right here to put some pressure on it. Pop. Okay. Now it's loose, as you can see, moving up and down. Now I can pull it out. Of course, I got to get that fuel line out of the way first, but I'll show you when I get access to the lifter belly. I have a feeling it's going to be nasty. It's already located one problem. This is carbon. These are supposed to be open for the EGR valve. So I'll have to clean all that out. It's called the heat crossover passage. It goes from here over to here. You can see there's a little bit of opening there, but that's almost all blocked up with carbon too. So that's got to get all cleaned out. You can see how crusty this is. Something to scrape it. Yeah, there we go. So you can... Hey, I might have found some aluminum. You see how nasty that is. Now, oh boy. Yeah. That's bad. I figured it would be. Now, word of caution, I just found this out, and because I forgot, that when you pull the intake, there's still going to be coolant in it. So that's why it looks like there's water driplets all over the place, is because it is. The coolant leaked down inside here. Now, I will be changing the oil on this thing because of the fact that I have to clean all this crap out of here. And of course, I'm not going to get it all. Some's going to go down into the oil pan. So that's part of the reason why I'll be changing the oil, which I had already planned to do anyway. But like I said, you can see how crusty it is in here. I'm going to try and get most of that out of there so I can, yeah, just going to try and get most of that out of there because it's bad. Anyway, show you more in a bit. All right, so you can see how crusty the spider here is. So I removed this to give me better access to the stuff under it so I can get that cleaned because that's where stuff likes to collect. But you can see how thick some of this stuff is. Plus, it'll be easier to clean this outside of the vehicle as well. But, wow. That is from neglect and not changing the oil regularly. So, word of caution, make sure you change your oil regularly. Don't put it off. Because this kind of stuff builds up in your engine and it causes excessive wear that doesn't need to be there. Make it live longer. Alright, since I found so much crust down inside the lifter valley, which as you can see I've gotten most of it out of there, so I had to pop a valve cover to see how bad it is up here. It's pretty crusty, but all I'm going to be concerned with down in here, you can't really see it. There's a buildup in here I want to get rid of because I can see that these are still getting oil. I want to make sure that these little holes here on the end, because the oil comes up through the push rod to oil these. I want to make sure that those are clear so that way it continues to get oil all the way across. And then I also figured out, if you look real close here, see how this is yeah, shiny, I guess. You see how it's starting to not be so, uh-oh, it was leaking. So I got to replace these gaskets anyway. Fortunately, I already have a new set. So all I got to do is just put them in after I do some cleaning, and then Yeah, never-ending battle. So what I didn't show you was the inside of this valve cover. It's pretty crusty, just like the lifter valley was. So I'm gonna get most of that junk out of there, at least the loose stuff. I'm not worried about making it perfect because there's just too much. And yeah, I want to make sure this engine lives a while, but as you can see, we're just gonna make it so that nothing falls down into the oil pan and plugs up any orifices. That's basically the point of this. So I wanted to show you the difference. This is what I've scraped already, and you can see where I have not. Just to show you how crusty the inside of this thing is. But like I said, all I'm going to end up doing then is taking some brake parts cleaner, hosing this out, and then hitting it with compressed air. I'm not worried, like I said, about getting everything perfectly clean. I just want to make sure I get all of the particles that could go flowing back through the oil system out of it. Alright, so this is as clean as I'm wanting to get it. As you can see, got rid of all the debris. Now, I also cleaned up the outside of it. And kind of as a, oops, oh man, it's shiny now. Wasn't exactly what I was going for, but hey, I'll take it. And here's the other side. So, time to repeat the process. Yay. Alright, there's the other one. Done as I'm gonna get it. Looks pretty good. A lot better than it did. That'll keep it from corroding up in there, so, or not corroding up, but a bunch of junk going down into the filter. So, as you can see, we're still apart. Got that one back on with the new gasket, and that'll be next up. Get this one done, and then finish cleaning up inside there, and then I have to clean the intake. Alright, so, as you can see, got the spider cleaned up, got the lifter valley cleaned up as much as I'm going to do. Valve covers are cleaned up, got new gaskets on. So, before I said I had the intake left, I kind of, oops, I forgot about the spider. I had to do that too. So, clean the bolts up and everything's tightened down. Now I just got to get the intake cleaned up. There's a couple other things I want to get done while I'm working on it, but that's the one I'm going to worry about right now. Oh, and check out the factory runs in the paint. Pretty cool, huh? All right, word of caution. Around the water jackets. 1, 2, 3, 4. As you can see, the metal is always kind of a little bit more porous than everything else. It's nice and smooth. Water always seems to seep around these, no matter how much sealer or anything the factory put on it. So you're always going to end up with a rough area here, relatively speaking. So if you're doing like I am and using a razor, be very, very careful, because it'll be stupid easy, 1, to break the razor blade, or 2, to gouge this surface. So take your time, do it slowly, and just kind of just shave it off until you get it down to where it's smooth. And then I'll show you when I go to put it in. I always put a real thin bead around the port on both sides of the gasket so we can make sure that it doesn't leak. Alright, so as you can see, got my gaskets in place. Now these particular ones, as you can see, they are marked rear. I don't know if you can read that. And this side up. Right there. Now, this set didn't come with it, which is I'm glad, because I wouldn't use it anyway, are the gaskets that go on the end there, because they never work, they always leak. Just run a nice thick bead of RTV. In this case, I am using Ultimate Gray. And I always, like I said before, around the water jackets on both sides of the gasket, I have a thin layer of the sealer just to be sure, hopefully, don't have any leaks. So I'm letting that set up for a minute or two before I go to slide the intake in here. And once I get that in there, I'll show you more. Okay, intake is in and torqued. I'll have to go back a little bit later because everything's going to settle and just double check the torques. But you see how the sealer is squeezing out from in between there? That's what you want to see. That's how you know you got enough in there. So now you don't want to obviously this much of it sticking out, because then you know that much is also going on the inside. Don't want that either. But that's installed. Now got to finish up the throttle body, and while this is while the RTV is setting up, because you want to give that time to set up before you put any fluids in it, and then we can go from there. All right, so while I'm working on the throttle body, my brother Lugnut here is going to be pulling my throttle cable out so we can lubricate it. So up underneath, you got a cable comes through. It's got a brass or aluminum, not sure which end, that actually locks it into the pedal, and as the pedal pivots, it pulls on that cable. Then up in the firewall, it's got a clip that's set up very similar to this end of the cable, like this, where you have to squeeze that and push it out through. That's what he's working on while I'm doing the throttle body. All right, so Lugnut here got the cable out, as you can see. Putting some oil down the tube, just a few drops. You don't need to go nuts with it. And then, whoop, I saw it drip out the other side, so that means we got oil all the way through it. See it dripping? That's how you know you got enough oil in there. Now basically, you just work it back and forth, rotate it a little bit, rotate this whole assembly so you can make sure that you got a good coating all the way around the inside of the casing. And that basically is because, like I said, this was sticking a little bit, so
didn't feel like it when I pulled it.
Either way, between that and the throttle body being gummed up, it was not working quite right. So that part's done, and then it just needs to get put back in. Reverse process. Right, so got the distributor in. Now, like I said before, you got to have the cap and rotor off to get that in there right. Now, what I did was I pulled the #1 spark plug out of it, and then I rotated the engine until I could feel compression coming out. Stuck my finger over the hole where the spark plug was, and then stick a screwdriver in there while rotating the engine gently, slowly, so you can feel the piston come up. Once it stops moving up and then starts going back down, back it back up till it's at its highest point. So the blowing out by your finger is your compression stroke, and then once you put it up to the top, it's top dead center on the compression stroke, and that's where you want to set your timing. So what I did was I set the rotor. Right now it's basically pointed right at this post, so that's going to be my #1. Then I put all my wires on there. I've got the hold down bolt just snugged so I can still rotate it when I go to start this up and set the timing. So that way I can fine tune the timing and call it good. All right, so got pretty much everything back in the back buttoned up. Heater hoses on there, distributors all in, plug wires are in, coil. Got that all tightened down, vacuum lines. A couple of things I'm still, for some reason, I can't find the bracket. It goes up here to hold these fuel lines. I don't remember what I did with it, so I'm kind of sitting here going, what did I do with that dumb thing? So I don't like the idea of these things being able to rattle around in there, so I got to figure out where that's at. Other than that, basically get that tied down, put this brace back on, and then it's hit the throttle body on there and plug everything in, and linkage over here. So yeah, show you more in a bit. Well, as you can see, it's back together and running pretty smooth. See my nice water flow through the heater cooler. Right now we're just warming it up so I can make sure the thermostat opens up, and then I'll top off the system. That way there's no air pockets left in it, and I'm also watching for leaks while I'm at it. Never did find that dumb bracket, so we're still kind of hunting for it, but I'm not going to get stupid looking for it. But at any rate, that's pretty much the end of this project, so have a good one.